This is April 26, 1983. Joe Todd, an interview with Mrs. Lucille Cole, C-O-L-E. Mrs. Cole, where were you born?
Brownwood, Texas.
And when's your birthday? When's your birthday?
November the 13th, 1892.
Who was your father?
My father was a Christian minister, G. Lyle, L-Y-L-E Smith. And he was from Huntsville, Texas.
And who was your mother?
Emma Cooper of Dallas. And they met when she was a student at Sam Houston there at Huntsville. It was his home, and she was in school down there. And she lived in the old Sam Houston home when she was a student there, which we thought was rather interesting.
Yeah.
Now I want to know, is that going?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll ask you later.
Okay.
I want to know where you got the red mustache and that black hair. My grandfather had red hair, and we like red hair.
Well,
State the subject.
You should have put that in.
you say your father was a minister?
Yes, for a Christian church.
How long did you live in Brownwood?
Only a few years, not too long. I don't remember exactly. Left there when I was very small.
And did you move up here?
No, we lived at Waco and Paris and Terrell. After that, I graduated from high school at Terrell, Texas, and moved here in 1910 to Oklahoma.
Did you come by train?
Yes.
Do you remember the train trip?
Yes.
Anything interesting happened on that trip?
Not anything special, no.
Do you remember the Spanish-American War?
Barely, yes. See, that was 98, one that I was
Yes,
born
ma'am.
in 92, so I'd be about 6 years old, so I just remember it slightly.
Do you remember people talking about the war?
Yes,
Or
yes, and an uncle who was in service and all, and I remember him talking about it.
What did he say about the war?
Oh, he was in the Galveston flood later, and he was much more impressed with that than he was with the war. That we heard much more about that Galveston flood than we ever did about the war. He didn't talk about the war very much,
He did.
but he was an engineer and was with an electrical company at Galveston and lived and survived by climbing on some of that heavy machinery there in the plant. So I remember that so much that was one thing that had impressed him very,
so
very
did
much.
he rode that hurricane out then in Galveston?
Yes.
1900?
Yes.
What else did he say about that flood, the hurricane?
Now, I'm a poor.
Well, yeah.
I can look ahead, but looking back, I'm not a very good backward looker. I'm wondering what we're going to do tomorrow, what's coming up. Interests me a lot more than what happened 100 years ago.
Did you go to Galveston after that flood?
Yes, but it was years later.
Years
I wasn't
later.
there
Yeah.
at the time.
What did Waurika look like when you first came here?
Muddy streets. I saw the paving being put down on Main Street. I saw the man lay pavement on there on Main Street. And I can remember when the Chamber of Commerce had a meeting, and one of the men came down from on the hill carrying his lantern with his boots on to go across the mud on Main Street to the Chamber of Commerce meeting.
Do you remember who paved the streets? The man's name?
No.
What did the buildings look like? What were they made of at that time?
Those, that paving?
Oh, the buildings.
Oh,
Were they all wooden or were they brick
no,
buildings?
they were some wooden buildings, but not too many of them. Most of them were we were there where west side of the east side of Main Street there when we first came here in 1920, and most of those buildings were brick.
Mm-hmm.
We still had some old wooden buildings, but.
You moved to Waurika in 1920?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you move in 1910?
Moved from Carroll, Texas to El Reno in 1910, and I began teaching in El Reno when I was 17 years old. And if anybody did that today, I'd scream my head off, putting a fool girl in at 17 years old.
What'd you teach?
Spelling, reading, some math. I had the principal would send room classes into me. They would change, and send them in to me, and I had just special classes, so I didn't have the same room I didn't have the same students all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was the name of the school you taught in?
Webster in El Reno.
Webster?
Uh-huh. It's out on the east side.
Did you have any college work after high school?
I began teaching without any college work, but since then I have had a little bit of college work at Edmond and Cameron and Aldous and a little bit from OU, until not very well educated. Yeah. Just a little spattering here and there.
Did you have to take a test for a teacher certificate?
No. There in El Reno they let me. Well, now then I'll say this. I graduated at Harrow, Texas, and that was the hardest school that I have ever seen. I mean, the requirement. When I went to El Reno, they required 32 credits to graduate, and they counted mine, and I had 57 from my high school, and they let me start teaching almost 57 credits that I had. But then I did go to Edmond and all later and took some additional work, but a little bit here and a little bit there.
Do you remember the Depression of 1907?
I remember the one of 1932 only too well.
Excuse me.
They're really nice.
Oh, we're lucky to have them. We know it. We appreciate it. I know.
Okay. Did you do any work in the canteen in El Reno during the First World War?
Mm-hmm. No, I never worked in the canteen here either. I was, they had one after I came here. We came here in 1920. When we first married, we went to Anadarko. My husband was express agent at Anadarko.
What year were you married?
1914.
1914.
Uh-huh.
What was your husband's name?
Jim Cole. Jim S. Cole, C-O-L-E. From Kentucky. And he was on his way to California, but like all young men, had to go to California one time or another. And he was on his way, and with a Kentucky, and he loved a horse. And a good horse was very important to him. And with the express company, he saw somebody mistreating one of their fine horses. And he just couldn't stand that. And he went down and applied for the job so he could get that horse away from the driver. And then I captured him and we stayed in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. And what year did you move to Anadarko?
1914.
1914. What was Anadarko like in 1914?
Oh, lots of Indians there at that time. Quite an Indian town, still is. But there were a lot of Indians there. He was express agent there, and I was put to work in the office for the express company. The first woman who ever went to work for the old American Railway Express. Now the American Express is different. But I was the first woman, the auditor who checked me in. Well, the Anadarko office had been robbed 3 times before we were sent there. We were a little apprehensive about going, of course. So when he was checking me in, he said, "Now, Lucille, if anybody comes in here to rob this office, give them anything they ask for, but don't argue with them." I said, "I won't, but I'll see if I can get into the safe and pull the door after me." I'm going to argue with anybody. Now, you want to turn this off, and I'll tell you one of the funny things that happened there.
Go
Right
ahead.
down there. In those days, the whiskey could be shipped into Oklahoma only in the 1-gallon cartons. And one day there was a man came in. I was in the express office most of the time by myself because my husband had to meet the trains and all, sign for shipments coming in and out. So this man came into the office and asked if he had a package in. I said yes. And I got it out and put it on the counter, and he kind of stood there, and I said, well, it's COD, $55. And he said, yes, lady, I know, but it said privilege of examination. And I looked, and I said, yes, you can examine it. And he kind of stood there and still looked embarrassed, and finally he said, well, lady, it's an artificial leg, and I want to try it on. He said, can I go back here into your room? Our office had the front office and then the storeroom at the back. And I said, yes, sir. And so he reached back in and pulled out a gun. It looked to me like a cannon, laid it up down the counter in front of me, and he said, now, lady, this is your protection while I'm back there. Well, that looked to me like a cannon. But he went back there, so while he was back there a man came in that had been there many times to get his gallon of whiskey. And he said, is it here? And I said, yes. And he had to sign the express book and also the whiskey book. And so I had him sign both of them. And I didn't go to get his package. And he said, Miss Cole, I'm in a hurry. Would you mind getting my package and letting me go? And I said, no, sir, I won't. There's a man back there, and I'm not going back there. And so he kind of looked at me, and I said, he's trying on his leg, and I'm not going back there. Well, the man just walked out of the office without arguing with him. He didn't get his whiskey, and he didn't go in. He went to the depot, and he said, Jim, you better go back up to the office. I said, I don't know what's going on out there, but Lucille wouldn't let me have my whiskey, and she had a gun on the counter. Well, Jim knew the office had been robbed several times, so he came dashing back. Well, in the meantime, the man had come out, and his leg had fit all right, and he gave me the money, and he said, you might wonder why I had this gun on me coming in here. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, I'm working a bunch of convicts out here on the highway, and I just came in. He said, I knew I was supposed to go back there, and said, I was just leaving that there for your protection. So they laughed at me for a long time about my man trying on his leg, and I wouldn't let the man have his whiskey. That was one of the funny experiences I had there.
Now, you say you were the first woman to work for the old
American Railway Express.
And what exactly were your duties with them?
Just handling, selling money orders or delivering packages and all that came in there.
Was this in Anadarko?
Yes. And then we were transferred from Anadarko into Lawton in 1918 during the war. My husband was sent there to the express office as cashier, and I was put on as clerk to make reports. And we had a table as long from here with that door piled with reports that had not been made. They were that far behind. And I was given the job of trying to catch up on reports. And I was trying to make them to a penny balance. And this auditor said, Miss Cole, if you come within $1, that's as close as the company would, if you would just come within $1 of getting those reports to balance. So I worked at that. So then we came here and went into the ragged business in 1920. And we're in the ragged business until 1932, and the Depression wiped us out flatter than a pancake. We don't know what the Depression was. They don't have to tell us, we knew.
Yeah. Can you describe the work done for the war effort in Anadarko and Lawton during World War One?
Not to my husband was drafted there at Anadarko, and so I saw him off, but he was only in for a very short time. He was sent over and got to France the day before peace, 2 days before peace. He got there on the 9th of November. So he insisted that he won the war, because just as soon as Hitler knew that he was there, he quit. Yeah. He was sure that was the main reason, of course.
Yeah.
But
So the Kaiser
then he
quit when
came
he
back.
landed.
He was not over long. He was sent back pretty soon, within there less than a year.
So the Kaiser quit when he landed.
If I
The Kaiser quit when he landed.
yes, Kaiser quit when he landed.
Mm-hmm. Did you get acquainted with any of the Indians in Anadarko?
Yes, quite a few of them that I knew, and they were very friendly, very, as I say, most of them very intelligent people. I'd say it was rather high class Indians there, and you had no trouble with them whatsoever in school or anything else. That we had anything at all. Very, very good there.
What tribal group were they?
I was, I think, now I'm not sure. I told you that my memory is not, I look forward, not back.
Yeah.
Arapahoes and Kiowas. I think mostly. I should know because I have a little bit of Indian ancestry, so I should remember better than that. Not enough to get any land or any deals on though. Mine ran out before I got there.
What were the names of some of the Indians that you met in Anadarko?
I was out at the Indian Agency one time, and I had just been on a trip up to New England, and they were very much interested in, said, did the Indians attack you often? And we said no, and I was out at the Indian Agency there at a tea, and Indian men with their moccasins and leather jackets and all, as sophisticated as any New Yorker you could have imagined, serving beautifully appointed table with crystal and silver, and Blue Eagle was one of them.
AC Blue Eagle?
AC Blue Eagle was one of them there that day. Painter, got to be quite well known, but those Indians were as sophisticated and as polished as anything you could imagine.
What was AC Blue Eagle like? What kind of man was he?
Oh, I don't know, just very pleasant, agreeable fellow there, and as I said, interested in his art and all, but I don't remember anything particularly. Now, there was one Indian girl there that had on a dress that they kept in the bank because it was valued at around $3,000 at that time. It was a leather dress, beaded and beautifully done. But she was wearing that Indian dress, and I don't remember her name, but she had on that beautiful Indian dress that they had taken out of the bank for that particular party.
And then you moved to Lawton in 1918.
Mm-hmm.
Was there much work for the war effort in Lawton?
Oh my goodness, yes.
What kind of work?
The USO, I remember particularly, they encouraged people so much to come to the USO and meet the boys, and the churches there insisted that the nice girls go to, that they didn't want them to meet on the wrong kind.
Mm-hmm.
So through the churches, we went to those dances and all quite a bit, and things of that kind that I remember. Now then, after my husband was drafted and went overseas, I was put in as cashier of the express company there at Lawton, and we would get in between $750,000 and $1 million in cold hard cash every month for the payroll out there at Fort Sill, and I would begin getting code messages. We had a little code book that I had to keep inside the very inside compartment of the safe, where it was as guarded as could be. But I began getting code messages that warning that the money would be arriving, and we wouldn't be told until a certain time. And I'd usually get 3 code messages, and then I was always in communication with the commanding officer out there at Fort Sill, And he was also getting the messages, of course, that the money was coming. And so when we knew that the money was coming in, I was given 6 MPs that guarded me constantly until I had the money and could deliver it to the bank. It was...
How'd they ship the money?
Huh?
How'd they ship the money?
Big metal safes. And we had to provide. Now the MPs went with the drivers to the depot when they went to meet the train, and see, we were told just exactly when it would be in. And so with the MPs and our drivers and all, they meet those safes, and they were guarded very carefully, of course. I had a little more money then than I'll ever see in all the rest of my life put together.
How long did you work with the payroll at Fort Sill?
1918 till we came here in 1920. I was there 2 years.
How come you came to Waurika?
A man there had a dry goods store where we did our shopping. We got to be friends with them, and they encouraged us here to go into partnership with them and come here. Wilkinson.
Wilkinson?
Mm-hmm.
And you opened a dry goods store?
Yes.
What was the name of it?
Wilkinson Cole. Kinson, Wilkinson Cole.
Where
I don't know
was
what this is worth anything to any history. I'm telling him a lot of personal history here that's not worth
You'd be
it to anybody but me.
You'd be surprised.
Where was the store located?
Now the first store that we had was there on the east side of Main Street, and then we moved across the street when a new building was built over there next to where the Brown drugstore is. There's a dress shop in there now, and we had that store then until the Depression flattened us, and I mean flattened us. I don't mean a little bit broke. We were a lot broke.
So you had the store from 1920 to 1932.
That's right.
Who were your main customers in those years?
Who were the best people in town?
Who were they?
How would I remember back that far?
What kind of dresses did you sell in the 20s?
Now we had dress material that was $11.50 a yard, and that nearly knocked their eyeballs out when we priced that to them. But it only took a yard to make a dress. It was wide and pretty.
That's a lot of money today for material.
That's a lot.
What kind of material was it?
It was a silk material with kind of nubby silk material, pretty. But I remember one time there was one of the teachers came in and she wanted material for an evening dress, and she wasn't very big, but we figured the length of the skirt would be so much, 2 lengths for the skirt, and then one for the top was all because it was just a sleeveless. And the young man came in with her, and I think we had sold her 2.5 yards to make her a dress, and we had some pretty silk shirt material. And he wanted to know how much of the shirt material it would take to make him a shirt. And I said 3 yards. And he said, now, do you mean to tell me that you make her a dress for her out of 2.5 yards, it'll take 3 yards for me? And I said, yes, it will. So he bought the 3 yards and had himself a shirt made.
What were the dress styles in the 20s?
Oh, rather long. They were pretty ankle length, quite long, most of them.
Were there any flappers in town?
I bet there were. They haven't gone out of style since then, have they?
I don't know. What is a flapper?
Well, we had some of this pretty underwear, and one of these flappers came in one day, and she said, Mr. Cole, do you think that would fit me? And he held it up to her. He said, yes, I think it will. I think she was a flapper.
Where does the word come from, the word flapper?
I don't know. Now, that's a good question. Where did that come from?
I don't know. No one knows.
No, I don't know.
Were hats popular then? In the 20s?
Not much, no. We didn't sell hats at all. We didn't have any hats there.
Okay. How'd you wear your hair in the 20s?
It what?
What kind of hairstyle did you have in the 1920s?
I didn't understand.
What kind of hairstyle did you
Oh,
have?
I had long hair then.
Oh,
I had long hair, yes.
oh, you didn't bob your hair then?
No, I hadn't bobbed my hair then for a long time.
And you didn't marcel it?
Well, I used to drive to Duncan to get my hair washed and set because I took cold if I got my long hair wet. And so I'd go to Duncan to get my hair washed and set because we didn't have any beauty parlor operators here at that time.
What did it cost to get your hair?
No. Could never afford it to do any more than that.
What kind of items besides shirting and dress material did you carry in the store?
It was mostly a dry goods store.
Okay, you weren't a general store then?
No, we were not a general store. We were just more a dry goods store.
Mm-hmm. Where'd your material come from?
Wichita, Kansas, most of it. Johnson Armor up there at Wichita, Kansas.
Who was did you have representatives call on you,
Yes.
or did you, okay.
We bought some from Dallas. Later years we did buy quite a bit from Dallas, but at first mostly from Wichita, Kansas.
What was the company in Dallas you bought from?
Higginbotham, Bailey, Logan, I believe I'm right. And then there was, oh dear, if I can think of the other one, where we did buy a lot of our notions and things of that kind. It wasn't Youngblood, it was something like that.
Now, did they have like the traveling salesman that?
Yes, they would have their traveling salesman who would come and call on you. Yes, we did most of our buying through the salesman.
Mm-hmm. How come the Depression broke you? What happened?
Well, the material that we had paid 37.5 cents for, we had to sell for 29. The bottom dropped out of the prices of things, and people didn't have the money to buy what we did have much. It was just a two-sided affair. The prices of material deteriorated so that we couldn't even sell it for what it had cost us. And then with people short of money beside.
So you went broke in 1932.
We were caught in the tension. We didn't know what it was.
So when the store closed, what'd you do that day, the day the store closed?
Oh, I came home and cried. Most of the day, it was an awful good day to cry all day.
What about all the material you had, all the dry goods?
We had to leave it there, and it was sold at a bankrupt sale.
So that pretty well wiped you out.
Absolutely.
What did you and your husband do then?
He began selling washing machines, and I worked hither and yon. Finally, I ended up, I worked first. I went out to Frederick as supervisor of the WPA, and they didn't want me even a little bit. The men had been getting along fine without a woman messing around with their business, and they didn't want me a bit. But they were a pretty nice bunch and helped me out, and we got along right out there. And then I was sent to Lawton as WPA supervisor.
What kind of job were you supervising in the WPA?
Oh, you had these caseworkers that went out and investigated people as to what their need was and what we could provide for them.
Something we could use today, isn't it?
Yes, not too much different from today. But
What was your salary with WPA?
I don't know. Couldn't have been very much. But I was working out there at Frederick and Lawton, and my husband would come and get me every weekend, and I'd come home every weekend. So we kept in touch. Everybody thought because I was working out there and he was here that was the end of our marriage. But Jim and I still liked each other. I liked the boy.
Did he make a good living selling washing machines?
Yes, he did. Maytag washing machines. He come home some days, he'd sold 2 or 3 and usually made about $60 on one whenever he sold a machine. So we didn't get rich on it, but we kept the wolf from getting inside. We'd howl him once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you're good at eliminating a lot of this.
Yes, ma'am.
That's your job, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can eliminate anything you want to.
How many people around Waurika went to California?
I don't remember too many.
Did
No.
you and your husband ever think of going to California?
No. We could just keep the wolf from getting inside. That was all we didn't think about. Though after we began to get a little bit more prosperous, every time we could get 2 nickels rubbed together, we'd go somewhere. We traveled. We made all the 48 states. People now, we traveled on a lot less money than they can do these days.
What kind of car did you have?
We started out with a Model T, and then we had a Chevrolet. We had an old open Model T at first, and then when we got our first sedan, it was a big deal.
You know who had the first car in Waurika?
No.
How long did you work for the WPA?
From about 32 to 35, something like that. As I said, now don't get me too pinned down on dates because I'm not good on them.
Can you tell me exactly what were your duties with the WPA?
What were my duties?
Yeah, you said you were a supervisor for
Supervisor.
caseworkers.
I wrote the food checks. I checked all these girls on their work coming in. I usually had 8 or 10 employees working under me that would go out and make the investigations and all, and they'd have to come back in and make their report, and then it was up to me to decide how much they could have. And I remember one time when I was at Outlets, when I was working out there, we ran clear out of money, and things were really, really serious out there. People were hungry, and I said out there at Outlets, they were people who wanted to work. They weren't just beggars and deadbeats. They wanted to work, but we had no money to give them, and they were out of food. And I know Mr. Grover Hope, who was the head man out there. He and I met a crowd on the courthouse steps one day, and they were ready to riot. They were ready, and we talked to them, and I finally went to one of the grocery stores and I said, now we have some canned meat, as that is the only thing in the world we have to give these people. And I said, I want bread. I want bread. And he said, Miss Cole, how much bread? And I said, all the bread you can get me. Well, that man was a grocery there, and he got to the other groceries and got all the bread that they could spare and gave me bread to give to people. And that's how serious things were. It was not a little bit, it was bad.
Sound like it.
Was that the area of the state that was hardest hit by the Depression?
That was hard, yes, because the cotton crop, that was a cotton country out there. One year when the crop was really bad, and I remember there was one hail storm came out there and simply wiped out the farmers. I saw fields that were just as bare almost as this floor, that had pretty good crops on them, and it was serious with them.
What about the dust storms?
That one?
The dust storms?
I remember some of them, yes.
How
We
bad?
had them along with everybody else, but
Can you describe what a dust storm looks like?
well, it just looked almost like a cyclone coming. They were just rolling across there in those rolls of dirt coming at you. Terrible.
How long would it last?
Sometimes 2 or 3 days. And everything that you had was gritty and grimy and all. You'd touch your table and everything was just as grimy as
So you
could
couldn't
be.
keep it out of your house then?
No, you couldn't keep it out of your house. No, you couldn't keep it out.
But
You could,
did you do anything to try to keep it out?
Hmm?
Did you do anything to try to keep it out?
oh, we'd do everything we could.
What would you do?
You would shut your windows, you'd draw your shades, and have everything shut up just as tight as you could, and didn't even dare open the door very much.
Get the kids in.
How would you breathe with all that dust?
A lot of people had dust pneumonia from it. It was bad for their lungs because they couldn't keep them
Would it
breathing.
do any good to wear a handkerchief or something?
Yes, a lot of times people working out would wear a wet rag over their face, you know. And I can see a lot of them that way with a wet rag tied over their face, but they had to be out in that dirt.
I talked to one lady that found a way to seal the house so the dust wouldn't get in. And she took towels and she took flour and water and pasted them over the windows and the door. And that sealed the doors and windows completely, except the lamps burned down.
Yeah.
And then you couldn't breathe because no walking, so you'd open the door and the dust would come in.
Oh dear.
Just staying busy and
Yeah. World War II. What did you and your husband do in the 40s?
Okay, let me think. 40s? That's too far back for me to remember, boy.
No. 1941?
Now then, we were back here before then because I came back from Lawton in about 1935. And I worked for a while for Dewey Stone in the abstract office. And then I went to work at the courthouse as deputy in the county clerk's office. About 1935, somewhere about there. And I worked there as the county clerk for several years, and then I was court clerk for several years. Was appointed court clerk when there was a vacancy.
do you remember what you were doing on Pearl Harbor December the 7th? Can you remember Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I do. My brother and his wife were in Hawaii at that time, and they were both civilian employees, but they didn't know where each other were for 3 days over there. By the way, this sister-in-law is taking her whole family, 10 of them, to Hawaii for a trip in June. She's taking the whole shebang. They live in Oklahoma City and they're so excited about it.
I'll bet.
But this sister-in-law is taking her 2 daughters and their husbands and the 4 grandchildren to Hawaii in June.
Be a fine trip. Yeah.
Was there a lot of work for the war effort in the Second World War? In
Yes.
Waurika?
Now I was working other things at that time. It was not, as far as I can remember, connected with that at all. With the war effort. I knew some of them that they worked at the canteen and meeting the trains and feeding the boys as they came in, but as far as any personal with that, I didn't have.
What about VJ Day, when the war ended? Was there a big celebration here in town when the Japanese surrendered?
Yes, the biggest celebration that I remember was when the First World War ended. And I was at Lawton and my husband was overseas, and we went wild.
Yeah, tell me about that. What'd you do that day, on Armistice Day?
We ran up and down the street. We closed the office and ran up and down the street, yelling at everybody we can, as excited as anything you could imagine. Just almost beside ourselves with excitement. But they couldn't keep me on the job that day.
What about VJ Day here in Waurika?
I don't remember too much about that, and I should, but I don't. I don't know. I can't get anything of anything that I think of any interest there, especially.
What's your favorite childhood memory?
Favorite type of memory?
Favorite childhood memory?
Well, my father was a preacher back in the days when they thought salvation was free, and we were poor people. Now, the fact that when I was a preacher's daughter, I could go with the best in town, but money was an awful scarce item with us. And I remember we lived at Terrell, Texas, and we had a big peach crop that year, and we thought if we didn't can those peaches, we'd go hungry the next winter. And I didn't think I wanted to see another peach as long as I lived. But I like peaches again. I'm awful sorry Charlie's damage this year.
Yeah.
But that, and then I began working for 10 cents an hour. A neighbor woman, Terrell, Texas, was a rich old town, and she sewed for the rich people. And after school, I could go to her house and whip lace for 10 cents an hour for the dresses for the rich people. And sometimes I'd come home with 60 or 70 cents a week, and I was sitting on top of the world. I was a money gal.
How do you whip lace? What is that?
With a needle and thread, just like that.
I mean, what do you sew it on the dress or what?
No, we'd sew the lace together. And I guess I would sew it onto material, but mostly it was just fitting the lace together because you'd have bands of different kinds of lace. Very stylish, very stylish.
What year was that?
That was 1909. I graduated in 1910. So it was along 1909 and 10.
What high school did you graduate from?
Terrell, Texas.
Terrell, Texas, 1910. Jim, you have any questions?
No, I think we have any.
Well, one thing, I started in Waurika. It was someone that I started down here. I started the United Fund in Waurika. I had been a member of 2 or 3 clubs and church, and so every drive that was made, they'd want somebody to work on this drive and that drive and the other drive. And I was with my hand out too many times and got tired of it. And Major Clendenin with the Salvation Army at Oklahoma City at that time told me that if I could get a bunch together down here, he'd come. And I went to the Lions Club and the Rotary Club and the Delton Club and all the clubs that I could find in town and begged for a United Fund. Don Morrison can verify that, because Don Morrison had a write-up in the paper about how it hounded people for a united fund. And, but of all the things that I can think of that I've done for Waurika, that's about the only thing I can think of any importance.
How many kids do you have?
None.
None.
No. Mr. Cole's nephew lived with us for 5 years, and he was definitely my boy, but he was Mr. Cole's nephew, but he was my boy. And I could say now, his name was Henry Carter, but I'd say, now, Bub, I'd rather you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
That was final. With his Uncle Jim, he would argue. But as far as I was concerned, there was no argument. He was my boy.
He mind you, would
He was my boy. We took him, he had, back in Kentucky, he had his uncle's farm. He'd fallen on a pitchfork and it hit on his hip bone. And the boy was about to lose his leg. And we were back there, and we insisted that the boy come to live with us. The fact that we took him when he was crippled and had something done for him, he was eternally grateful. We had him operated on. I had that leg, and he had no more trouble with it. He could see a very slight limp, but such a little bit that it was not noticeable.
Do you remember the flu epidemic of 1918?
No, not so much then. Now, I was working there at Lawton at that time, and there was one boy that slept at the back of the office, trying to for protection for the office. He was given a room back there. So he was sick one week, and we had all looked at him, an awful nice kid, and we all liked him. And so on Monday morning, we came back to work, and the MPs were in charge of the office. We found that this boy had broken out with smallpox, and we had all been back there with him all week. And they told us that you either go on or vaccinated, or you go to detention camp. But we all went and got vaccinated right fast. And when nobody had it but them. There was quite a scare there. But I remember that much more than the epidemic. And I remember Ruby Duncan, who was a teacher here for so many years. Her husband died with the 1918. But then I don't remember too much about that. One other thing that I tell, I was state president of the Business Freshman Women's Club in 1935-36. I was the first president of the club here in 1924. And finally got up to state president. And so, not too much else that I know.
Well, I think we have a good one. Do you have any more questions? Anything?
Travel was after, well, as I said, Mr. Cole and I traveled all over the United States, and then after he died, I made a trip to Alaska and to Hawaii. And then every time we'd get nickels to rub together, we'd start planning where can we go next. And
a lot of fun.
My dad was sure we were going to end up in the poor farm, and I think we'll make it yet, but we're on the way. But we've had an awful good time on the way.
Well, we'll see you later.
Well, I hope it'll be it. Now, eliminate a lot. You've been brave.
We appreciate you letting us come in.
Well, I didn't know what you needed or what you expected or what you wanted even. If you hadn't asked questions, I wouldn't have known where to start or where to stop.
Thank you.